Welcome back. So, we're finally talking about it. I said I was going to talk about it like twice. When I originally talked about this album slash mixtape, I'm probably going to keep calling it an album because that's what I'm so used to. So, bear with me on that. But I remember talking about this about a month ago, and it then got pushed back a month, only for it to fall into the Drake and Kendrick beef scenario and the craziness that happened. So I don't think this mixtape got as nearly as much traction as probably Four Bats wanted to. But let's talk about Four Bats in general. So Four Bats kind of has grown very popular over the beginning of 2024, possibly into the latter end of 2023. I honestly don't know where this started, but Day to Date has like over 100 million streams, and it has gotten so incredibly popular. There was another single that was released, I believe either was Stickers or something else, but then you had a Kanye cosign, you had a Drake cosign. Kanye has a feature on this mixtape, and there is a lot of accusations and a lot of suspicion to think that Four Bats may be an industry plant. I don't think that's the case. I think this is honestly a scenario where someone just gets really popular really, really quick. Like, you put out one of your first songs and it already pops off. It doesn't happen often, but when it does, the trajectory can go a little bit insane, especially considering that the time that we're in, where you could put anything onto social media, and if it sticks, it can have a good old run, and it could put you into a position that you never thought you would expect. So this mixtape dropped, and I think the conversation of getting so fast into popularity and so fast of being one of the bigger artists of this year, and it kind of talks about a little bit in the intro, is that I went from this to being one of the biggest artists in the world. And I think this mixtape has that issue of where it's not really fully fleshed out. There is a mixtape here of ideas, especially in the first portion. Stickers and honestly Day to Date are really good examples of how these are just kind of just in the moment ideas. They are not cohesively thought through, and you could definitely see these songs possibly refined a little bit later. Again, it definitely fits into the generation we are now of instant gratification. You need to get a song out very quick, and you have to make it very brief, so that way it's replayable, but it's also remixable. You can throw it into reels, and you can do whatever you want with it. It definitely falls into that scenario, and it works very well in those scenarios. But when you throw it onto a mixtape where it's supposed to kind of live on its own, it really doesn't have the legs that it would as a single. You do get some other songs on here, though, that are a little bit more fleshed out, like I Hate to Be Left Alone, which has a little bit like an 80s synth kind of Michael Jackson kind of vibe to it. And to Four Bats' credit, it does sound a little bit more of an experiment, a little bit more being fleshed out, a little bit more thought, a little bit more care is kind of put into it to make the song a little bit more interesting. On God is also another one that does have a little bit more of a cohesive structure, a little bit of an idea of what it wants to do, and the Kanye feature is honestly not that bad on the remix of it. I'm not even gonna lie to you. Another thing that I find with this album is that it's just basically Brent Faiyaz if he was immature. What I mean by that is I'm trying to think of one of the songs on here. I think it's like 18 plus, I think it's called. The lines on some of these songs are so juvenile and so just I think Four Bats is meaning it to sound sexual and sound like very just alluring and sexual. But saying a woman is wet like a windshield is not the way to do it, I don't think. And also, I think there's another line, it's like pussy dripping down my legs. It's just like, we don't need these grotesque details. Like, when you think of Brent Faiyaz, like, there's that toxicity to it. But Brent Faiyaz has an incredible voice, and he knows how to not make it just utterly grotesque about some of the lines on the Four Bats album here. Like, I don't think Four Bats is like really making these lines sound the best. Like, I think this writing is honestly quite juvenile, and I don't think it really works in the context of the sound that this album's going for. It's basically just high pitched Four Bats or high pitched Brent Faiyaz. Honest, and the funny thing about this too is that after this mixtape was done, Brent Faiyaz played immediately after, and it was a night and day difference. I will tell you that much. It was from his newest mixtape, which is Larger Than Life. I think it was Forever Yours that played, and man, that is a big difference. And honestly, I had no idea that the Brent Faiyaz kind of vocal delivery and also some of the production is a lot more influential than I thought it was, because 3 or 4 tracks into the shuffle, because I was playing Fortnite, I'm gonna be honest, but I was playing that, and I heard like 3 or 4 different people that sounded exactly like Brent Faiyaz. So I had no idea of how influential his sound was. But the big reason of why I wanted to do this video is that it reminds me of 2016. And 2016 had Designer. I think a lot of people still are familiar with who Designer was. He made Panda, he was on Pablo, he was signed to Good Music. And signed by Pusha T, actually. It was not Kanye's doing. It was Pusha that did that. But this is the exact same scenario that happened, where Designer put out Panda, and it went insanely viral and insanely popular. And so much so you had the part 2 on Life of Pablo. It's basically just a Panda remix. And Designer was on the XXL freshman list. Timmy Turner dropped, and that got insanely popular. And I think the same thing applies from Designer that does to Four Bats, where Designer, I think, just got so incredibly popular so fast that when you put out the album, which was New English at the time, there was a lot of complaints and a lot of people saying that this is just a mixtape of ideas. And the New English album was definitely that. I think, honestly, the New English album was a lot worse than this. Because at least with this one, I feel like there's a little bit more of something there. Like, there is something that could be fleshed out upon and something that could work in the future, in the long term. New English, honestly, did not have that. But it just kind of goes to show that we have kind of gone through this cycle before. It's just now we're in the context of 2024, where everybody's jumping on the industry plant bandwagon and really just kind of bring down the artist for just honestly just getting popular really fast. I don't think the industry plant thing doesn't have a lot of merit. It's just a little bit interesting of how quickly this guy got popular. But that's kind of why I wanted to bring it up. Is like, we kind of been through this before. Do I see a future though where Four Bats is still really popular, or maybe experimenting with his sound? Maybe. But I feel like the audience and the fan base that's really gravitated towards Four Bats is really for this sound. And I feel like if Four Bats was to experiment, I don't know if they would follow along with him for the rest of the way. But this mixtape in general, again, it's just a really big mess of ideas. And some songs do stick out. But honestly, I think this mixtape is just going to get a 3 out of 10 for me for right now. It's not the best starting point, and I think you could have waited a little bit longer to really make an album that is a little bit more ideal, a little bit more kind of thought out, a little bit more maybe put like a concept to it, or make these songs a little bit more interesting when it comes to the instrumentals and when it comes to the vocals. There's the smoke detector beep thing that honestly really grates on my ears. There is a lot of times where the snare drum patterns of songs really repeat on themselves. There is a lot of things that Four Bats really needs to do to make himself distinct from everybody else. Because I can think of at least 2 or 3 other artists, Brent Faiyaz especially, that makes this sound so much better and makes this sound a lot more interesting. So, I talked about Four Bats finally. But let me know your thoughts on this mixtape and Four Bats in general. Is he an industry plant? Give me some reasons in the comments, because I do really want to have a discussion about this. But thank you very much for watching, and yeah, hope you have a good night, and I will talk to you again soon.